I just checked on that,
On YouTube?
Linda said, yeah, look on YouTube to see if it does this one. See if it showed up.
Okay. What?
Linda? Still out?
Yeah.
Harvey, what are you doing for Thanksgiving?
We're going up to Massachusetts to our younger son Chris's house.
That'll be perfect.
Yeah, we were also invited to drive 8 hours down, right on the,
Oh, like
Southwest.
Route 7, kind of that area there, like Lee.
yes,
Okay.
exactly, yeah. 44 to 7 and you're there.
That's a nice drive. I always like
It is, I like it, it's nice and twisty and fun to do. You can go up 91 and then over the Mass Pike, but
Yep.
I don't like to do that.
No charm to that drive.
Absolutely none.
So, yeah, no charm at all. Yeah, 44 is beautiful. I love going up 7 too. It's a nice drive.
So I guess we got a couple of minutes. Mrs. T got here,
Oh, did you really? Yeah.
and now she can hear it, and I go,
Seriously, all these
It's on there.
successful marriage. She
So-
wants to invade you.
Yeah, it's recording. I just,
Okay, we hit the button.
yeah, it's,
They work for her though. They're doing.
it's too soon. She's
All
only
right.
had him about a week, so I'm told it takes a couple of months to get, because your brain is
All right, call the meeting to order.
not hearing.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for coming. Another raucous,
You remember the
raucous meeting of the Board of Finance.
we're done. I'll tell the story.
We have the minutes of the October 17th meeting. Can I get a motion to approve those?
So moved, Gelston.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Watley.
Thank you. Any comments, deletions, questions? additions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Noes, abstains? Nope. Okay,
Yeah.
passes. Thank you. Guests and audience comments. Would anyone like to comment prior to our discussion of any relevant topics? No? Okay, thank you. Correspondence. I did get an email from the redevelopment agency chair, and they are there we are. They're putting an RFP together to get a consultant to provide information about TIF financing. And if I was smart, I would have remembered what TIF meant, tax something, something. And there was a discussion about having someone from Board of Finance be a liaison to the redevelopment agency during this process, at least during this process. The agency meets the second and fourth Thursdays of the month. Does anybody want to take that on? Want to
Sure,
with that, with the TIF thing and everything?
Yeah.
Okay, I will,
I'd be happy to do
I
that.
will forward your name to Melanie.
thank you, Harvey.
You're very welcome.
Okay.
I knew you were jumping to do it.
Chairman's report, and actually, all right, we'll do tax collector's report first, and then I'll shout out what I was thinking. So here we are, tax collector's report. I don't know, we don't have a year over year on the thing. Any comments? All set, we're good?
Good job.
Money's coming
Can I
in.
just
Yes,
add
Rob,
that,
thank you.
At the last meeting, we talked a little bit about, well, what about the taxes that aren't collected? Because it doesn't show 100% tax collection.
Correct.
And so, in the audit each year, there is a report that actually breaks down what all of the collections were. So some of the collections in a current year would be on the tax bills from the prior year and even going back farther. It's rare that we write off taxes, but there are some occasions where we'll write off taxes because there's the property to secure it has no value. The person that is owing the taxes may be in prison, something like that. But
Yeah, I mean, we have such a good collection rate, there really isn't that much that's left outstanding. Okay, thank you. Okay, so committee reports, and now that we've added Harvey to another assignment, I wanted to review our committee assignments, if that's okay with y'all. The policy thing was Bill's fun, he liked that. It's not my particular area of interest. So here's what I was thinking, and now that you've taken on the redevelopment thing, which I think is a good idea for somebody to be there hearing what's going on. If I take you off of long range and put myself there, and then if I'm not on policy, I would offer that up to someone else. I don't know if Rebecca, if you would like to try that. And if you want to keep the communications, that's fine. If you want to switch, that's fine.
I actually really enjoy being on the communications, but I would be open to it at some point. If
Okay.
that's a possibility.
Does anyone else want to jump on policy?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
We had some brief discussion about seeing if Bill DeCristofaro,
I know, I still haven't checked to see how
Okay.
that would work, and he's on the redevelopment thing too, so.
right, but he does a lot of heavy lifting without breaking a sweat, so if
All right, we
he,
could.
he
I'll-
were
I'll
open
look
to
at-
that.
if- I wanted to offer it to see if somebody wanted to do it, and if we don't have somebody who wants to jump at it, then I'll see if we can get Bill to join us and just get through this last bit that we have to get done.
Yeah, I'm not, that's that. Well, we're gonna get to it in a moment.
Right.
But, once we finish with the general fund revenue sources, we need to have a little discussion about what more there is.
Right,
It-
exactly,
it-
yeah.
It may be a little bit and it may be a lot.
Right.
We'll have to figure that out.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll check with Linda and see how we would do that, because it would have to be an ad hoc committee, because he's not on the board. But I don't think that's a problem. If everybody else thinks that would be an issue to have him work on it, we would still have to vote on them. It's not like, we wouldn't have any say in what comes to us. It's just that it would have to be an ad hoc committee because he's not on the board of finance. All right, and are you okay if I take over long range then?
Absolutely.
All right. All right, so we'll switch those things up and we will check to see if we can get someone with more experience on the policy committee. All right, so now, committee reports, communications. Who would like to jump in? Well, since you were the only one who was actually physically here, Todd.
Okay, well, we decided our next article is going to be about the budget process again, which is no harm in updating the article from last year. It's a good refresher, if anything. And we're going to meet December 1st and go over our first draft. And then we plan to have a finished draft to the Board of Finance by your meeting on December 12th, which I believe is the second Monday in December. And then submittal to the East Haddam News soon after that.
Okay.
So we plan to publish the article, have it in the January 5th edition of the East Haddam News, which is 4 days prior to the tri-board,
Okay,
which is, I think, is consistent with draft schedule that we're gonna look at later in this meeting.
Excuse me, thank you. Okay. Any questions? Very good. Long range. As we discussed last time, that comes through the first selectman's office. Rob and I have been having some conversations about the scoring that we've had discussions about. Do you want to jump in on
Sure.
that? Thank you.
So, I looked at how ClearGov generates a scoring report and how our policy reads for this, the scoring. And basically, our policy reads that we do calculation number 1, and then we assign scores in calculation number 2 and multiply them against each other in order to come up with a ranking. The issue is that ClearGov doesn't have that ability to basically do the 2 separate steps. The other issue is that our ranking has, in step 2, a ranking of like 1.25 or 1.5 for a category. ClearGov only recognizes whole numbers. So I don't think it's going to be very difficult to reconcile our policy to be able to work with ClearGov, but like looks to me like one of the biggest problems was, for example, one of the categories in our policy says, if it meets this criteria, you get a 0.5. If it meets this criteria in the same category, it's a 1.25. And if it meets this criteria, it's a 1.5. ClearGov can only look at a yes or a no for a category, basically. It can't, like, give
Okay.
quantify a category.
Either on or off. Okay.
So, again, I think it's really going to be pretty simple to reconcile the language to make them work, but it'll still accomplish the same thing.
Okay. So maybe the 3 of us maybe can put our heads together and sort that out for now, so we can make it work before this long-range capital improvements committee gets together.
Which I believe is Thursday evening?
It is.
Okay, all right. I wasn't on the email, so there is a meeting scheduled for Thursday?
Yes.
Okay, so obviously we can't get it done before that, but,
Well,
right, so Thursday.
I
and
can
then-
add just that I don't think that any of the changing in the language is going to change the concept of how the ranking.
Right, I think we just need to get them to match up.
right, but let me put this differently. My social calendar is so terribly full that tomorrow, Wednesday, or during the day Thursday would work.
Why don't we look at the week after Thanksgiving? Does that work? Are you good during the day? Good during the day?
I believe so.
Okay, all right, all right.
I know I'm good this week.
Okay, so we'll check after the meeting and we'll,
Okay,
Together.
let me then, if I may ask a question.
yep,
While it's, the first selectman is the chair, and it's sort of her agenda, is it your expectation that this is, not having this totally resolved, isn't gonna have us sitting there Thursday night twiddling our thumbs?
I don't believe that it'll be a problem. After speaking with the first selectman on this, the idea behind the meeting on Tuesday is not to actually start doing any ranking because we don't even have any of the requests in yet. But it's really basically just to inform the committee that this is the process that we're going to be doing and, you know, work out some dates, when we're going to have the capital requests, when we need to have it through. So it should actually be a very short meeting.
Okay.
all right, and then if we work on that ranking thing and get it sorted out, and then we can run it through the board of finance policy and, you know, all that stuff. Just so that everything matches up and it's,
Yep.
it'll work.
Madam Chairman?
Yep.
I have a question. For this calculation of the ranking, I'm sure we're not the only town to have this problem with ClearGov. Is there another program or subroutine that can take the information, can read ClearGov, take the information, do your ranking, and then feed it back to ClearGov again?
Not that I'm aware of, but actually, as you mentioned that, it occurs to me there probably are other towns that
Yeah.
have already written policies that
Right.
already conform to ClearGov's ability, so that's a great point. See if I can find out.
If I may interrupt again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not entirely sure that having your policies driven by the capabilities of a purchased software package is the wisest way to run a town, right? There were good reasons why the policy was set the way it was. And last year, we had basically no problem. In the first stage, it's if you might recall, it's kind of a two-step screening process.
Right.
Does it do A, B, C, and you put a number next to that. You get a score, right? And then ClearGov, then you go through another set of questions. Does it do this or that or the other thing, some, a lot, a ton, and you sort of multiply the factors.
Right.
In the past, we used ClearGov last year when we were doing this, and it was no problem to come up with the first
Right.
threshold.
Right.
I mean, you can do them in your head. And then just plug that number in, and then ClearGov seemed to be able to apply it. And I believe, because our esteemed Cindy 2 wasn't available, Cindy 1 over here
Yeah,
did that with like
it was actually, it worked out fine, the way. it was
grease
last
through a
time.
goose.
I don't know what your policy exactly says, to be honest with you, so I don't know what you're ranking the policy, but it did, Cindy B,
Yeah, right.
did work it out, so it did actually work out well, so you did through the first three half, you came up with a number, so it was 1 through 9, I think it was, or 1 through.
I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
And then you would rank everything below that based on what that number was, and then it came up, and it did a very good job of figuring out the whole process as is.
Right.
And they did not, and I believe everybody within the room still had the policy regarding to what the Board of Finance policy was, and it seemed to match pretty well. I mean, I know it didn't do 0.5s or anything, but it definitely ranked everything clearly, so.
Right. I mean, I understand what you're saying about not having it be driven by the, computer model, but we can make it a little clearer then so that we don't have to run into a glitch if we,
Right.
in this situation.
No,
So
I think we can work this out.
I think it's just a quick,
Yeah, I'm just making the point that, or trying to make the point,
Yeah.
probably not very well, that, the fact that Excel doesn't do it doesn't mean it
Right.
ain't something that we should be doing.
right,
Right.
right. But if we could avoid,
And it might smooth the wheels of making a suggestion out of turn. It might smooth the wheels of reconciling what ClearGov does, what the policy does, when we sit down to do that. If we were to impose on,
Yeah, Rob and I can get together and take a look at it,
okay,
sure.
right.
okay,
Sounds good. Yeah, well, I think it'll be quick.
I'm not saying that the computer program should dictate your life, absolutely not. Computer programs are strictly a tool. It's the human that makes the decision. And the tool is there to help the human make the decision. I thought it might be a clearer calculation, but if it's not, you guys can work with it, I'm okay with that. I just offered maybe a simpler
no,
solution.
I wasn't
consistent.
criticizing what you were saying. I was
Right.
just
No, I understand,
reacting against, we can't do that because ClearGov won't let us. Well, tough bananas.
Right.
That's exactly, I was reacting the same thing.
Okay.
And, okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, and financial policies, we have something in front of us for, under old business, so we will look at the, and the Board of Ed.
Madam Chairman?
Yep.
I have a question about policies. What is our records retention policy? Do we have one?
For Board of Finance?
Yes,
I'm guessing it's statutory in some nature, but I don't know.
it is. It is, turns out it is. That's one of the jobs of the Board of Finances in the state, is determining how town financial records are to be kept.
Okay,
And in addition to that, there needs to be a records retention schedule. Like, are our financial records thrown away immediately? Or they need to be hung on to for about 7 years or 10 years? I don't know what the answer to that question is, but I imagine it's some time period.
Okay,
But the basic question is, do we have a records retention policy?
all
We
right.
should have one, is what I found out.
I know that the city clerk updates our code of ordinances book every year, and I think that I recall seeing something about records retention in there, but I can check on that.
So you'll find out?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm sorry. As far as developing or continuing to develop policies, all of, as far as I can understand and have discovered, all of the research for the general fund revenue sources are, I've kind of gone through with each of the departments and worked that out, or got it down into words. And assuming it meets with the board's approval, the next step I was going to undertake was to sit down with Rob a little bit. He and I kind of get each other up to speed on what's what. And the next step, as I see it, is simply to format the material into the tabular form that our policies seem to have taken. And in doing that, Rob and I may or may not decide that it would be helpful to reach out to Cindy Varicchio. And if that's okay with the board, to touch base with her, we would probably
She has offered.
make
so-
our lives much
Yeah,
easier.
she has offered. She knows what we're doing, so.
Okay, that's all I got.
Great, thank you. So I do have one other thing before we jump past my thing, which is kind of on Rob's thing too, but we did get a letter, well, Irene got a letter, from the Government Finance Officers Association. We are pleased to notify you that your annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021 qualifies for GFOA's Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by a government and its management. So we have received the award again. So congratulations. Congratulations to everyone involved, including Mrs. Vericchio and Mr. Funk. So we'll get another plaque. Woo!
It's raising the bar.
Right?
Correct.
It's very, it's a lot of
Do that.
pressure. It's a lot of pressure. For Selectmen's report, Irene is not here tonight. We have Finance Director's report.
Okay, so I passed out in the packet the September financial report. Just as a general rule of thumb, we have 25% of the year completed, but the actual expenditures that we've recorded are about 16% of the budget, and the actual revenues that we recorded are about 47% of the budget. Revenues don't necessarily match up with the percentage of the year that's completed because of the way that revenues are booked. Some things we get like 2 payments in a year, some things we get 1 payment in a year. So if it's a revenue source where we get 1 payment or 2 payments in a year and we're only a quarter of the way through the year, then we're showing half of the revenue for the year, even though we're only a quarter of the way through the year. As far as items that are highlights in here, one thing under revenues is last year we noted that we earned substantially higher than budgeted revenues in conveyance fees and building permits, and we're seeing that same trend again this year. However, with conveyance fees, my understanding is that in October we've kind of seen that drop off a bit. So we do see higher than budgeted revenues through September, but I don't think that we'll see that through the balance of the year. There's some other highlights. Board of Finance shows only 22.7% of the budget spent. That's because of the contingency fund, which hasn't been allocated yet. The Board of Finance had approved to allocate a portion of the contingency fund to cover the cost of the HR director. Number one, that budget transfer has not actually been booked yet. Number two, the HR director was out for the first period that he was employed, so there was no expense booked during the time that he was out. And number three, the expense for him is actually being booked to the Shared Services Department, which is where the budget for his position needs to be transferred to.
Okay.
The Regional Probate Court, for example, shows that it's 50% expended because we only get billed twice a year. We get billed at the beginning of the year and then again at the end of the year. So, example of why it looks odd. Let's see, what else is here? Shared Services is pretty far under budget because we had a vacancy in the school business manager position and a vacancy in the finance director position for a portion of the year. That's partially offset by the fact that the HR director, for the few weeks that he was employed, actually I'm not even sure if he was employed until after the end of September, was booked to that. Resident state troopers, an example, we get billed once per year and it's in May, so we won't see any expense there until we get into the last quarter of the year. Fringe benefits are a bit over budget, and looking into that, the reason for that is we've actually had higher utilization than what we had budgeted. A couple of new employees that came on and selected health insurance benefits. Also, a couple of employees that had waived health insurance in past years that chose to take health insurance this year. I don't know who they are, nor would it be at my liberty to say who they were if I did, but it's not a pricing thing. It's just the fact that there's higher utilization. Happy to take questions if you have any questions.
Anyone?
Yes, I have a question, a couple of questions. The HR director, is there any resolution of that? It's only applied now to the town side, not to the education side?
It's being booked in shared services, so shared services includes expenses for both the town and education.
So I'm a little confused. So if it's only in, for the town, why is it in shared services?
Because that's the way that it was budgeted,
Okay,
and I'm happy to change it, however I'm directed to change it, but, you know, at this point, it's booked the way that it was budgeted and approved.
because this was an issue, here's what I'm concerned about. This was an issue in a public meeting, budget meeting last year, and the question might come up again, and what's our answer going to be, is my concern. So, yes or no? Does the Board of Education wish to employ an HR director?
My feeling is that we can go through the year, keep it in shared services, see what happens, and if it doesn't work out that the Board of Ed is using the HR director, then we can move it to a town position, town only.
Okay, that's good, but I also have another question. We budgeted so much money for the HR director with the assumption it will cover both camps. If it's only covering one camp, does that mean the budget is half what it should be?
That's the whole thing, is like, we got involved in this whole thing of how much they should get paid and how much work they're gonna do and who they're gonna work for, and we don't run the town. We don't run the Board of Ed.
I understand that, but you know,
So he's being utilized in the way he's being utilized based on the needs of what the CEO of the town says and the CEO of the Board of Ed says. So I can't tell them how to use this person because I'm not running the town and I'm not running the Board of Ed.
I understand that, but as it was said at the public meeting last year, we're the financiers of this operation, and we took a position as a Board of Finance, which I thought was reasonable and fair.
Right.
And the right thing to do. So, I forgot now, what was the budget for the HR director, 75,000?
79.5
79?
or something like that.
So, I'll be hypothetical here. I don't think you want to get in a situation where we spend all that money on the town side. Because that wasn't the intent to the taxpayers who voted on the budget. So I guess very simply, you can just say 50% of the 75,000 is for the town side, is what I'm proposing here.
Well, I mean, I don't think we can switch everything around now.
I
mean, budget is
understand.
Budget, right? Like,
I
yeah.
understand, but I don't want to get in front of the public in May, and neither do you, I don't think.
Well, I think it'll wash itself out in the budget process. Like, we're gonna find out when they come to us and say, how many hours is he working? How many hours is he working for the town versus Board of Ed? Where do we put this position?
That's right. I guess we don't want to have the perception that we're going over budget on one side of the house. That's what I'm worried about.
I think, yeah. Right now, it's actually a Board of Finance, like, it's coming out of our money and then it's getting transferred, so.
That's right.
Yeah,
So we're in it deep.
yeah, but there's only, I mean, it's only got X amount of dollars in it, so
Okay.
that's how much work you're gonna get out of it, so.
I could provide a little bit of clarity on that. So shared services is a department in the budget that is a town expense, but shared services includes in it services that benefit the Board of Education and services that benefit the town. So it's not considered an education expense for the purpose of the minimum budget requirement or any of those things. But essentially, everything that's booked in shared services is considered a town expense. So first of all, by the fact that that position was vacant, or at least the person was not getting paid for a portion of that time, you'll see that as a savings to budget. So it'll just be unexpended money, which,
That's fine.
you know, if it doesn't get transferred to something else, then it'll lapse back to fund balance at the end of the year. And secondly, I shouldn't say all of the expenses, but in shared services, but the idea behind shared services is that pretty much anything that is in there is to the benefit of both education and town. So if one utilizes something more than another, that's not necessarily measured. You know, there's computer services, there's building maintenance. When we budget it, we do budget it within the department, the shared services department, as this is what is going to go to the benefit of education, this is what's going to go to the benefit of town, but it's still, in the bottom line, all gets booked as a town expense.
Right, we're not piecemealing out the IT guy as X amount to the town and X amount to the BOE, so, yeah, so same idea, yeah, I guess. I think we just kind of, the Board of Finance, we got in the middle of it, and I don't think that's where we're supposed to be. So I'd like to see it shake out, see how it works. We finally hired somebody, they're doing a job. Let's see what that job is after this year, and then we'll sort it out, see what we think it's supposed to happen. Harvey?
If I understand correctly, as it sits now, there's an HR director in shared services, a budget line, with zero budgeted because we put that money in contingency.
Right.
So at the end of the fiscal year, if we do nothing, what's going to show up in shared services is an over budget for whatever we paid the guy.
I was under the impression that the Board of Finance already approved that the dollars would be moved from contingency to
No,
shared services.
we never, no, we've never had a motion on the floor to do that.
Okay,
I
and it
think
hasn't
we
been
should,
booked.
though. I mean,
And, okay, and that's exactly where I'm going. I suggest that the way to straighten this out and get everything in the buckets that it should be in and that we're comfortable with is to ask that the Board of Selectmen prepare a thing that says, we'd like to move X dollars from contingency to shared services, and this is the reason why.
yeah. So like
And if I,
quarterly or something?
I'm sorry, what?
Quarterly,
No, they can move the budget dollars.
the whole thing? Or,
What portion of what's in contingency do they want to move and why?
okay.
Good idea.
and then we get what people want on the table. And it either seems to make sense or it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Else we're gonna stumble through till June 30th, not knowing what we're doing.
Okay,
Does that make sense, Madam Chairman?
yes, it does.
Okay.
All right, so we can work on that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that good?
Yes, that's good.
Okay. All right, anything else for Rob on the year-to-date? Okay.
Tell us about capital.
Wanna do capital?
Sure. So this capital report, as far as I know, this is a new report for you.
Yes.
This is, and I put draft on it because the whole process is also new to me, and I know that there are some things that need to go through the audit in order for me to fully understand how some funds have transferred from one year to the other. We're not talking substantial funds, but I just didn't want anybody to think this is the final gospel here. But this is essentially a report that takes what was in the fiscal year '23 budget book.
Oh, right here. Sorry.
In the fiscal year '23 budget book for the fiscal year '23 capital plan, so that first column, at the top, you see that if you add all the departments together, it comes to $2,674,739. That plus the $2.8 million for, I think it was the athletic complex, is what adds up to what's in the budget book. The athletic complex is treated differently because it's funded differently. But essentially, so we take this $2,674,000 that was approved in the budget book, we add to it $3,468,357 of funds that are carrying over from prior years, because capital, just in its general nature, is such that a project is not likely to be completed in its first year. And then the next column is revisions approved during fiscal year '23. So this is the area that's a little bit gray for me. But, for example, the $498,000 that's in Public Works, most of that is road work. That $471,000, which I know has already been encumbered or paid in fiscal year '23, so I'm sure the intent was to carry that money forward. I just don't have record yet of how that was carried forward, so I'm
Okay.
still working on that, but I believe that that's correct. And there's a few other items in there that are transfers of unexpended funds from fiscal year '22 into a different project in fiscal year '23. But if you look at the third page here, actually you see Public Works truck number 8 minus $12,200 in that column. Public Works truck number 13 plus $12,200 in that column. The reason I highlighted that is that's the one transaction in here that was a change that I was actually involved in. That we approved at a prior meeting. But the idea is that the rest of that is generally the same. So in looking at this report, we get an idea of, in the capital projects that we have pending in the current year, how far we are with them financially and what still needs to be done. So like, for example, transfer station used backhoe. We have $7,293 on that. We've not spent or encumbered anything on that yet this year. I just picked that one because that was just one that I saw, nothing significant about that. This is also something that we'll share at the Long Range Capital Committee meeting on Thursday. And this is also being shared with department heads, and department heads will be providing feedback as to where they sit with this. You know, transfer station bulky waste, okay, there's $30,000 available. I don't see anything spent, so I want to find out from the Public Works Director, what's the plan on that? Is this a project that we want to put off to another time, or is that something that's going to happen in the next month, or, you know, by the end of the year, or what, just so that we have a more up-to-date idea for our future planning.
On the education page, Rob, under remaining, the math, there's no math there.
Oh, that doesn't look right, does it? Well, I apologize, that's a
Okay.
formula error.
Okay,
I'm glad I put draft on it. I will fix that.
Okay.
I mean, we can see
right,
what the obvious answers are, but that's just a formula error.
okay. I think this is a great report to have.
And my hope is to be able to provide this quarterly. I don't think it makes sense to try and update it monthly
Monthly,
because
right.
there's just so much, activity going one way or the other and a lot of encumbrances that
Right.
ultimately can get changed, but I do think that it's really helpful to at least have it quarterly.
That would be great, thank you. Yeah, these are the things that we never really pay attention to, except for once a year, but. Good, any questions for Rob on this? Joe, anything? Bruce, Todd?
No, thank you.
No. Great, appreciate it, that's a great one.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All righty, and the budget calendar,
So this is identical to the budget calendar that I provided at the last meeting, except that we just added some of the Board of Ed dates, which are not the Board of Finance's meeting dates or due dates, but we wanted to make sure that we understand the process that the Board of Ed is going through as well. And so I highlighted all of those in blue. And this is a draft schedule, it's always a draft schedule, because there's always something that can change. We can get into a discussion about something that could require, a great deal more work or time, but
Right.
one of the things that we tried to watch out for is we didn't want to hold a public meeting during school break, so we did avoid that time. So the plan would be that the tri-board meeting that kind of kicks it off for us is January 9th. The budget public hearing is April 18th. The town meeting is 2 weeks after that, as per I believe that's state law, May 2nd. And then the referendum would be May 16th, 2 weeks after that.
and we all work backwards from there.
And obviously, there will be lots and lots of working Board of Finance meetings, but it didn't make sense to try and schedule the actual dates. of
No,
them.
we'll work on that in like January 1. Very good, thank you.
And then the
And
last,
just, I'm sorry, so, Mr. Reese is here, I just wanted to say that I know that January is later than we used to do November, but I don't think this holds you up in any way from doing your Board of Ed work. Whatever you present to us is generally just an overview, there's no hard numbers in it, you're looking at budget drivers or things. So if you need to present to Board of Ed before you come to us, I don't think that's a problem.
So the way it works with our calendar, we'll actually present the the superintendent's budget the following night,
Okay,
so it works fine.
okay, all right,
And as you say, it's really just to get kind of the town-wide issues all in one meeting. and
Exactly.
Kind of work from there.
right, yeah.
It's pretty broad strokes.
Yeah, we're not holding you to anything at the tri-board meeting at all, yeah. Okay. Okay, Rob, audit?
so just an update on the audit. As you know, we were typically the first audit to be completed by our auditing firm each year, but with the staff change, they needed to push that farther back. The audit was planned to be started the beginning of November. Our auditing firm has a staffing issue where the person who was the lead staff member that would work on the audit is going to be out for extended leave. So they've rescheduled to start the audit work the Monday after Thanksgiving. One of the things that we were concerned about that could potentially cause a delay in the audit was getting the actuary work done, but that's actually all been completed now, so that's not an issue. So at this point, we plan and expect to be able to complete the audit on time, which is December 31st is the deadline. Realistically, there is the possibility that something will come up that'll cause us to need to file for an extension to be able to complete the audit by the end of January. If an extension needs to be filed, it's the auditor that actually files the extension. Again, fingers crossed that's not going to happen, but we can't necessarily control what the audit firm staffing is working with and everything. The other thing is that Cindy Verkio suggested that we should file for an extension with GFOA, because it will take a little bit of time to file everything after the audit is done. And so that's something that we should probably file for an extension sooner rather than later for.
So she says to file with GFOA even if we don't file with the state. Okay, so you'll take care of that?
Yep.
Okay. Certainly don't want to miss out on another award because they're late. 3 in a row. So much stress. Anything else, Rob? Any questions? We good? All right. Moving along. Liaison reports. Anybody chatted with anyone? Okay. Old business. Hey. Look at you're here. So exciting. Da-da-da-da. School HVAC grant application. So as we all recall, last month the Board of Ed came to us because the state put out a grant application for HVAC that they said, jump through all these hoops and you have 6 weeks to do it. So update on that is,
So we wanted to give you, I kind of feel like, you're proposing that you enter a new restaurant and you have to figure out the menu really fast. So I apologize for that in advance. We're not trying to get to an exact answer. We're trying to more find out if you're interested in the pasta, the chicken, or the fish. So I'm going to give you a lot of information and kind of get a feel from you on the direction we're trying to go. This is our best situation. Just one reminder for you is that one of the reasons we're seeing you twice in the last few weeks is that the state put a 12/1 deadline on this grant application. There are some things that can be done after that application, but the key piece that has to be done before the application is to say you've secured funds to move forward. I am optimistic, and I have no real support for this optimism, it's just I'm optimistic, that there'll be more flexibility coming and that they really wanted people to get moving quickly because HVAC has an extended wait time to it these days because of all the industry issues. And so they wanted to make sure we were moving along because this is state ARPA money. So Joe Spurgeon is here. Joe is the chair of the CIP committee, and this is under the realm of CIP. And Patty Stricker is here as well, and she is a member of CIP and the Board of Education. So just to be clear, they may tell me, where I make a mistake in presenting something, and that's where they're coming from on that. So essentially, I'm going to offer you 3 options that I think are possible and give you ideas of how we would fund those. So the first option is to take the projects, all 3 schools, and put the projects all into one bundle, which we talked about the last time when you approved our ability to apply, not the application, but the ability to apply, and to look at a $4.2 million loan grant. That would mean essentially about $2.1 million in match. The second option, option B, is to come down the middle, to do as much as we can with $2.9 million, with approximately $1.4 million to be required by the town. And the final one is a $1.14 million project. And this would really be a very, just a few pieces of the larger project. This would be probably most likely the replacement of the control systems in the buildings, which would immediately upon being installed save money in resources because of the efficiency that those would add to our systems. The second piece would be the high school chiller, which is approaching its 30th birthday. And while it is held on, it's ready to go. So it needs to be replaced sooner than later. So that would be an option. So let me take you through, on the second slide, how we might go about funding these projects. So one of the things that happens with state grants is you have the opportunity to look at your HVAC in general and look at the part of the project that you've already started. We've already started our HVAC upgrade. We started that with our oil tank, and we started that with our boiler replacement. So essentially, the way we would write this grant in this first category is to put in essentially that is our matching, that those are our matching funds. $584,000, which is monies that you've already appropriated, and that would be the town's match at 48%. This would allow us to spend about 1.2 million in funds overall, which would allow us most likely to get through those two management systems for the middle school and high school, and potentially the chiller as well. That's probably the easiest, quickest option. And that's really what was option C on the front. Okay, all right, am I turning this over incorrectly? Okay. All right, so the next option is to look at option A. And so the way the numbers could work for that is to look at, there's a $2 million town match required. You've already donated 584, you've already committed 584,000 in the projects you've already taken on. You've committed 175,000 in HVAC study, so we're adding those up. And there's $800,000, there's over $900,000 in Board of Education capital reserves. So there's the possibility of using $800,000, and for a mere $457,000, that monies you would have to find. It's possible to do this. This is a stretch in a few ways. One is that I don't know if the designers can work fast enough to make this happen and to have enough information by December 1 to make the state happy. So in some ways it's a stretch logistically as much as it is financially. But I thought from a Board of Finance perspective to look at a $4 million price tag and say, well, I only need to find 450,000. I thought it was worth mentioning that it's enticing, right? It's got possibilities. And I understand it's money, and I understand all that. So, however, and then there's option B, which is the $2.9 million project. And that is essentially, we'd probably have to make some decisions about what to do with the systems. There may be less expensive systems in certain places. We may not be able to accomplish the whole project. Where this changes, most of this is the same. Where this changes is it's very possible to do that and only hit $664,000 of capital reserves that are currently in reserves as they stand. So there's not a lot of fundraising involved in that. So that's a real option as well. It has the same potential issue with as option A because it allows us to, or has the potential that we can't plan quick enough, right? Because it's difficult. And then there's option C, which is essentially just using what we talked about earlier, and that is to take and just do the building management systems, the chiller replacement, and you can see how that works out to that our funds that we've currently committed would essentially support us if they took the grant as a whole, support us to not commit additional funds. So 0 out of the reserves and 0 additional funds needed from the town. So those are kind of the three options that I went over very, very quickly. I apologize for the speed. But it gives you an idea of how this is possible. We don't usually, as the Board of Ed or even CIP, get into the funding piece. However, when I talked to Tracy and it became very clear how fast some of this stuff is happening, I just wanted to be very, kind of put some ideas out there for you. There's two things to consider. One is that, one is a financial decision. The second is we are, we obviously are going to move forward on a project if in fact the grant comes through, right? We don't start a project and start spending millions of dollars and then hoping that the grant comes through. We would obviously apply and hope to hear very quickly. And then that is their intent. We are in a really good position. We hired an architect last week to help us through this process because you were all visionary with us with our Long-Range Capital Improvements Committee, and this was on our radar. So that's a good place to be. Many of my colleagues would love to be in that position of having already done that. There are some pieces that need to fall into place, and our deadline for having the funds is not the end of this month. Our deadline for having somebody say we have a plan to procure the funds is the end of this month. So we need somewhere, either here or potentially, I guess, selectmen, to say we plan to have a meeting we plan to have either a referendum or a town meeting to have this decision made. Because the state understands we can't move everything in a day, but would like to see us have a plan to be funding projects. So I know that's a lot to throw at you. I apologize for that. I think it gives you some viable options. And obviously everything's somewhat dependent on our ability to design the systems and make sure that we're taking care of, among other things, Mr. Gelston's questions that he had at the last session, which I have written down carefully for the people that will actually understand them, the engineers and all that. So,
Thank you.
So that's kind of the menu, and just trying to get a feel. I'm sensing Joe wants to say something from my right ear over here, or maybe that was Patty, I'm not sure. But if there's something that I missed, feel free to.
No, not missing anything, but just to kind of clarify. So before I even knew about the grant, right, you all had approved us to spend $175,000 on designing HVAC for all 3 schools. So that work is happening. That's what we hired these architects for. It just happened to be as we were in that process, the grant came up, right? So that's what kind of threw all this off a little bit for us. So, had that grant been offered 6 months later, we'd be in a really good spot to say that option A, here's what that real number looks like, okay? So when you look at those 3 options, A, B, and C, when our committee discussed it, what we said was, we're not comfortable coming to you today and saying, here's what's going to cost to do all 3 schools or 2 schools. Here's a reasonable way that we got there, and Mr. Reese shared that with you last time, right? We used some old quotes and doubled them. Our designer said that they clearly can't give us a number by 12/1 to plug that number in, or enough time to let you guys know what that number might look like. And so where option C kind of came from was we already had some work that we'd already done, right? We already replaced the boilers. We already had that money available. And then in talking to them, what we knew was that this chiller was very old. And what they did say, and Todd, this might be more to you, or Bruce might be more to you, is that we could, the way those chillers work in the high school now is they serve just a certain isolated area in the high school. And so they could, if we had to take advantage of the funds, they could, hey, let's replace those chillers and then still redesign a whole system around that without later disrupting those chillers that they added. So, if we replace those chillers as part of the grant, we get grant funding for it, great, right? We got some funding for it. And then we wouldn't, it doesn't disrupt whatever else we might do in the rest of the school. They can build around it. That was our biggest concern, right? We don't want to do something and spend money today, bad money today, right, if we have to replace it later. So that's kind of where we came up with these three ideas. Our committee's goal, right, I think, and Ms. Reese can correct me if I'm wrong, our committee's goal is what I said first, right? We have $175,000 to do design builds for the HVAC system at all three schools. That's not stopping, right? That's part of this thing. The other thing was, how do we, though, take advantage of state funds, and what can we do to potentially get some reimbursement? So that's kind of where we are.
So my first question is, what paperwork do you think you can get done by 12/1? Okay. What,
I thought you raised your hand to answer the question.
what did you want to answer that, or?
Oh, no, I have other questions, but I can answer that one.
Okay, whoever wants to answer that, like, I mean, I think we'll go along with whatever you think, but what can you get finished? Like, what do you think you can get through by 12/1?
So I think so we're literally in the process of signing the contract. We picked the firm and we're trying to sign the contract
For the design,
for the design piece.
okay, okay,
And that's where we would get our estimators
Right.
involved. You know, so there's some estimating they could do. They can do the management system estimating pretty quickly. They can do the chiller estimating. There's other estimating they could do. And we're trying to give them a scope for that. So big picture, I'm not totally sure. But the estimates are going to be the issue that we would have a difficult time with. And to allow them some flexibility, because we also want to make sure we're not just writing down what prices we can find, we're actually designing systems that are the best thing for our schools.
right.
So I think either B or C are possibilities. B might require more of my optimism than C. I think C's can be easily done. But the paperwork for B, I think, is possible.
How about the paperwork for A?
I think the state would have to show some serious flexibility for us. And they could say, you're not quite ready, and that might be, okay. That's, in the state system, sometimes that's how you get an extension. You put something in and they say, well, this is only,
Half done.
it's not quite, it's still gooey in the middle. Can you please, resubmit it in a month? And that could be really helpful to us.
And if I could share a little bit, and we struggled as a committee kind of getting our head around all this, which I'm sure you guys are too. What the designers did say, if you guys said A, right, let's take advantage and get as much reimbursement as possible, they can design a system for $4.2 million. Just tell them, hey, if you got $4.2 million, they'll design a system that will get us $4.2 million and get state grant for 52% of that. So they said if we knew a number, we can tell them that number. But that wasn't really what we were tasked with, right? We were tasked with building a complete HVAC system for all three schools. However, the Board of Finance says, hey, we need to optimize this grant. That was something they said they could react to. I don't know what that means as far as all the design work that they would need to show the state. They clearly wouldn't have that done by 12/1, but they were somewhat optimistic that if they knew what the number was, that number could be supported in how they built it. It might not be exactly what we all would want, or we would all have a lot of input on, but it was a possibility, they said. And I'm not saying that we thought that was the best possibility, that it wasn't.
Well, Harvey started, let's go back to Harvey, anything else?
Yeah. Yeah, if you tell me I got you need me to justify 4.2 million, I could figure that out, right? And you could submit a grant. The question then would be that was kind of we got a number, we got to justify it. Do you then get the opportunity, once the grant is, suppose the state buys it and the grant's awarded, do you then get within that, the flexibility to go back and say, well, we said we were gonna do A, B, and C, but actually, we're better off doing E, F, and G? Or are you tied to the design specifics from does the state tie you to the design specifics? Or do you get some flexibility when you come back and say, oh, we really thought about this some more and we think the town would be better off, the kids would be better off if we did it slightly differently?
Cindy, do you recall what was required?
So-
It's just, right now, it's just the number, right?
No, there's a lot more required. So they have to apply, we have to apply by school, so we have to put in a grant per school.
Okay.
So it's not a lump sum, we can't just say, oh, the district wants $4.2 million, and here's our funding source. So it is a per school, per grant type funding. We can go in and try and get reimbursed, which is part of our funding balance, is what we were talking about, the money that's already been put out, is to put in for hopeful reimbursement of past project, which is the oil tank and the boilers, which I hate they're both called tanks, but, so we're hoping, at the very least, we'll definitely put those two in. The rest of it is more of an individual, so they will have to design, they will have to give us a cost estimate by school. So if we were gonna do this, the middle, high school chiller, that would be a thing that's part of the, that would be another individual thing. Each one of the building maintenance, management systems will be individual for each school. So we have to put them in individually for each school. I'm not sure of the flexibility. So they do require us to have a facility study and assessments. They do require us a professional cost estimate. We need a long-term facility capital plan on how we're gonna take care of everything we put in. We have to have education specifications, which we can do with the Board of Education fairly simply. They're not, they sound like a big thing, but they're actually just a couple pages. We have to get the authorization, which you already gave us. You already gave the superintendent the authorization for the grant. We have to have a CIP committee. You've already gotten that. So there's a lot of things we've already done, which are great, which will apply to all these individual grants, but you do have to do it individually. As far as the flexibility, once you get in there, I have no idea
So
how flexible they are.
I'm confident the answer's yes. Because the way the state's going to work is there's certain parameters they want us to hit. We're probably not going to hit them on the first shot, right? The first grants, here's what we're thinking will be the units. And then they're gonna come back and say, well, how does that do for sound in the classrooms? How does that do for efficiency? How does that, what is the air quality? Can you improve the air quality? Like, there's going to be an iterative process, I believe, and there typically is with DAS. There will be an iterative process of, well, we're not sure that's the best system. I think there's gonna be back and forth with that, because there typically is.
Okay.
They typically don't hold us to, you said you were going to get Mitsubishi, like this. I mean, I've not seen that, because as long as we're following our bid requirements, we're not breaking those laws.
Okay.
Or, that we're following the bid as we put it out. So.
Yeah, I know. Patty, what do you want to say?
Stop it.
That's right, I didn't want to interrupt. Just a couple of things. When we just hired this firm, so you're asking them to do a ton of work by December 1st. The ink just dried on this. And I'm not trying to shut down the project, because HVAC is hugely needed in our schools, but we have to do it wisely. So I just want to say that. The other thing is that there was a lot of talk during our committee as well, is there going to be another grant possibility coming up? And where do all the other schools sit in? And it was interesting to hear their views that some schools are ready, a lot of schools are not ready, and what they're doing is now formulating and getting themselves all prepared for the next time that this grant comes off the shelves, and so that they're really shovel ready to kind of go in there. This is the first time that I think that we're really kind of seeing this put together like this, so the Board of Education has not, like, seen
Okay.
a lot of this yet. And the only other thing I want to say is that just taking into consideration the Board of Education reserves, you know, you're looking at 800,000 out of 900,000, kind of wipes the bank, and then on option B, where we are too, I'm just gonna be more of the financial worry wart for the board and out of, you know, business and planning of, we haven't talked to long range, we don't know what's coming down the pipe,
Right, yeah,
so,
I understand.
and I'm not against this project, Mr. Rubba, I'm totally in favor of it. So I'm just putting everything out on the table there that, how to do it.
Right. Okay, we'll go back around, Joe.
A lot to digest. So I feel like a worst case scenario is still pretty good, right? Like a worst case scenario is we can go with option C ideally. That's practical to get. Not that I'm advocating for option C, but I mean, if that's like, it's practical to be able to get the documentation and the plans and all that in order to get to move forward on that. And B is a possibility, but it sounds like A is out of reach.
I think that's, I mean, B and A are both going to be complicated. So, and there may be something between C and B, but just to give us practical things to talk about, we thought it would be helpful to have at least some structure.
Oh, no, that's fantastic. I appreciate that. How would this go with, do we have to go to, will we have to go to referendum over this? What's the threshold for?
If we, you know, are gonna issue debt or something like that, if it comes out of, you know, budget items, then it would be part of the budget, but, you know, if it's gonna go to referendum, I mean, to, bonding, then yeah, it has to.
So I think my initial takeaway is like to steal from you, Patty, I can concerned about, I don't want to spend the money, but on the flip side, it's a lot of work to be able to get done for what, potentially 12 cents on the dollar. I mean, that's pretty appealing, and all stuff that's eventually going to come down the pike. So, I'm in favor of trying to find whatever the sweet spot is to get everything done that's practical and that we can try to get funded to get as much work done without crushing anyone in the process.
Bruce?
So Plan A scares you to death.
And when I say it scares me to death, we're not ready. That, the bottom line, we just hired this firm, and if you want a true HVAC system that is going to last per school, we need to give the people that we hired a chance to do the design correctly, talk it over, and look at our long-range plan on these schools. That's my opinion.
I think you summed up what the committee felt too.
Yeah.
The CIP committee kind of feels similar to that.
Right. I mean, we could tell them, there's 4.2 million, put something on paper, but that's kind of.
And it might
That's-
be, I'm making up a number, it might need,
Right.
might need 8.4 million.
Exactly, I
We
know,
don't
exactly,
You-
yeah.
You gentlemen might know more than I do, but that 4.2 was
Right,
double the old number.
right. So that we don't even know if that's a real number.
But don't you start high and then you back down to where you can,
But we don't even know if the 4.2 is legit. So I found something.
well, if it was
The other thing
even,
too that we spent a lot of time talking to the designers about, right, is, and you know, it's, kind of remember when we were doing the athletic complex, I kind of tried to get everybody to say, it's not a track, right? Because everybody's like,
Right.
You're building a track? No, we're building an athletic complex. And so this is an HVAC system, right? It's
Right.
air quality and air conditioning. It's not just putting air conditioning units in a window.
Right.
Right, so I think that's really important too. There's a lot of changes, Mr. Dutch, Mr. Gelson might know, there's a lot of changes in requirements and systems and what refrigerants you can use and noise levels and all of that, which is, I think, developing even kind of as we speak. And so, do we design a system that maybe is good today, but maybe not for the future? So all those things, I think, we just need real time to do. And to be honest with you, the reason why we kind of develop it this way is we don't want to be inconsiderate of the funds that are available, right? And it's important to take advantage of what's available from the state. At the same time, our committee's task was to design a system for all 3 schools, right? And so I think Patty and I are saying we're not sure by just picking 4.2 million, right, that we would be doing the task that we were asked instead of trying to fit into a schedule the state put on us.
That we didn't even know about
That
at
we
the
didn't even
time
know
that we were,
And it has to be done by 2024,
right.
correct? So that's the other thing that you have to be aware of. Whatever funds that you get, your project needs to be done by 2024.
Right.
So, again, I go back to the main thing on A. We just signed the contract with them. We need to design out, we have to figure out what is HVAC for each of those schools. Where are we now? Where are we going with them? So, and again, it just,
I hear you, I understand.
Bruce?
Bruce, anything else?
Okay, well, I was just gonna say that from a mathematical standpoint, you get the most bang for your buck if these numbers were to be true. Clearly, that's the better way to go in my mind.
For A?
For A.
Yeah, if the numbers work out,
You
but
can't do it, you can't do it.
I think the time constraints are what's the issue here. If this, yeah, if
Why'd
this
they
happened.
show it to us? Got me all excited here and
Well, I think, so I know Cindy Burkio had mentioned oh, there's gonna be an HVAC, there's gonna be an HVAC grant, right? And so it was kind of, floating in the wind, and then all of a sudden it shows up, and then they put this time frame on it of kind of ridiculous. The number of schools that are ready for this is minuscule as far as the state, the number of schools in the state versus how many are prepared with everything, all their ducks in a row and all this stuff being ready. It's going to be so small. So I don't know what the purpose of it was to do it, try and get it done in this fashion, but,
Well, they recognize that. They'd recognize that they've done this to us.
I don't know. Why they do it in the first place then? I don't understand, but.
They'll probably put some extensions in there or whatever.
Right.
But, just to say that, I just want to say that I had my doubts about the athletic complex, and then all of a sudden, look where we are. So,
True. Yeah.
you never know.
Yeah.
That's
So-
all I got.
I'll put myself in the middle here. If we do see, right, and I don't want to sound stupid, but if we do see and we get a 1.14 million grant, do we get the 1.4 or do we only get the 674?
The 674.
Okay.
Because we've already essentially spent or planned to spend the 584.
Okay. And then if you do B or C, what's the remaining, what's left to do then?
So that's not totally known, right?
That's the whole, right.
I think that's there's the potential that takes care of 2 schools, and the elementary school is still working. And the elementary school is the lesser issue because it has all of their mini split units in it already. So it's already a cool school, so to speak. But, so it's already conditioned at some level. So that was already kind of a lesser need. High school and middle schools are the more
Right.
significant.
And I think our committee would look to the Board of Ed or the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen to modify our task if we were to go that route, right? To just do 2 schools. Because our task was get the pricing for 3. And And so, we're kind of like an apolitical group, right? We're not the ones who get to pick which schools are going to do that or what the budget might, we can make some recommendations, hey, based on the cost, here's what we would think. But,
Right.
I mean, ultimately, I think that's a Board of Ed probably decision on if we're gonna not do all three, which one or ones would get picked. And that would just be based on whatever our committee finds with our designers.
Right.
And that kind of goes back to that first thing. We need our designers to design to know what is needed in each one
Right.
for total HVAC.
And when this came up, this was gonna be a town-funded project anyway. So this is gravy, whatever we're looking at, it was not anticipated when all this stuff talking started. So we're just trying to maximize the amount of gravy we get, I guess. Okay, Todd.
I have about 7 questions, a couple of comments. I try to make it as simple as possible. First of all, in my experience, a properly designed system can be easily installed in stages or phases. We're not the first ones to have this problem. You design your ductwork, even though you only got a chiller that has so many BTUs or cubic feet of flow capacity, but you put your ductwork in because you anticipate larger capacity later on. And that's actually a good thing because later on it could cost more for materials and labor. So a properly designed system can be installed in stages. You're not locked in to do the whole thing or nothing. The second thing is, the bigger the job, there's a lot of nuts and bolts and pieces to life support systems, like air conditioning or heating, it's complicated. You got all the duct work, you got the electrical connections, you got the chillers and heat exchange. I call them just heat exchangers because they add heat or they take away heat. And the bigger the job, the more vulnerable you are to surprises, particularly if you put in a system in an existing building that's not new. And along with that comes cost increases. So the bigger the job, the higher the risk. 4.2 million may not do it today. Even though your engineers do a good job doing estimates, they put a big swag number on there for that kind of risk. So now I get to questions. Is this grant a guarantee? The reason I'm asking that question, I read an article in the newspaper about a month ago about this program. And it was like a big total number, but it was a lot of schools. So you divide it out, it's not 4.2 million per school, it's like 1 million at max, maybe I think 500,000 what I came up with. So some schools aren't gonna get what they want. And so this grant is not a guarantee though, it's a risk, right? Okay, so, and the state, interesting. I'm not sure we're a town that's gonna get a lot of money because we're fairly we're conservative. Other towns are in deeper trouble, particularly the cities or the suburbs of some cities. So that's something to think about in the back of our heads. The second question I have is, well, that drives to this question. Is it realistic to think that East Haddam will get a 4.2 million grant? I don't know, I'm not so sure about that. The next question is, does the grant cover inflation and cost growth? That's why they want it done by 2024, because it doesn't, most likely, right? So you got that risk too, and I don't know about you folks, but materials have been going up quite a bit over the past few months, and I've been told by the people I do business with, they see more coming. So that's something to consider. So the next question I have, option C, does it cover immediate needs? In other words, what you do fixes problems. It's not money just for the future. It's something we're doing now that fixes the problem we have now. And it won't negate doing anything else further on if another opportunity comes on another grant. Because I think you're right, the state will offer another grant, a program like this, because they know all towns go through this kind of issues. And options, go ahead.
So I think option C, that the control systems do add an efficiency immediately, right? And that's an issue we have. They also add an opportunity for us to make the control systems to work properly, and that's also somewhat of an issue. The chiller is most likely going to need to be replaced no matter what. It's 30 years old. It's, you know, it's done a great job, but it's old. It's up for it's in need now. Still working, but it's in need. So I think I can't imagine it wouldn't be more efficient to have a new chiller there as opposed to what was there from the early 1990s, right? I mean, I'm sure they're more efficient now. So I think the answer to that is yes. I think working backwards, in most of our state grants, we have to say, okay, or like when we go for reimbursement for something, we have to say, here's our project, yes, we're doing it no matter what, and please reimburse us at our reimbursable rate for part of it. And so we start the project, move along, and they approve it, but it's not necessarily, it is a grant approval, but there's still this, you know, make sure you can do it. Whereas this is a little bit different in that this is, in terms of the guarantee, I mean, guarantee is a funny word, you know, it's kind of one of those, make a choice. My understanding is by 12/31/22, they will say, you're authorized to have this grant, you're not. You know, you need to jump through these additional hoops for us, but here's what we're planning to give you. As opposed to our typical, which is more plan the project, fund the project fully, and we'll see about funding you with your percentage. So guarantee no, in the world of schools grants, it's actually a nicer place to be. It's where we are with the field project, right? Here's your money, here's what you're getting. It's a better place to be than we typically are, where it's, you know, what percentage of which piece of the project, if you follow all the rules, are we gonna fund you? So on the guarantee continuum, I would say it's in a better place than the other. Yeah, I think we're trying to deal with the cards we were dealt, right? There's no disagreement here in the room. We're trying to say, you know, I think Harvey said at the last meeting, you know, wouldn't we look a little silly, my words, wouldn't we look a little silly if we didn't make an attempt, right, to go for state funding? We're trying to put the options on the table. The cards are not coming to us in the time frame we asked them, you know, could we please have this happen in March? And then, you know, it's not happening. So we're trying to make the best of that. So I appreciate it's a difficult situation for everybody, but, you know, and obviously, you know, nobody's going to ask, you clearly have, even if I might, nobody's going to ask the architects to you know, look a different way, you know, look away from quality and do something that's not what we need. So that's obviously not on the table. But again, we're getting dealt cards that aren't the easiest to deal with, right?
I have a few more questions, Patty. Okay, out-of-pocket cash. Obviously, option C has the least out-of-pocket cash for East Haddam, right? Plus, it also provides return on we're getting something done to improve the quality and the capacity. So, for that, all these reasons above, I think we got our best chance, if we apply for the grant for option C, we got our best chance in getting it, first of all. And then also, it's lowest cost out-of-pocket cash, it's minimal risk. We know what we're getting, it's a piece that we can control, and we have less concern about a cost overrun killing us and more out-of-pocket cash. So I think we're gonna get a better chance of getting the grant granted. It's a lower out-of-pocket cost for Town of East Haddam, and it also, at the same time, obviously fixes some known needs that we have in the school system right now. And so I'm all for option C for that reason. But I also want to add something before I go. In the old days, air conditioning systems, heating systems were just that. They gave you cool air, dry air. They gave you warm air, sometimes too dry, sometimes too moist. But now the important thing is air quality. The systems have recognized, particularly hospitals, how important air quality is. There's a lot of sick buildings around because they harbor germs in the air conditioning ducts. And it causes problems for people. Legionnaire's disease aboard a cruise ship, 20 years ago? That was a big reason why those people got hit so hard with Legionnaire's disease. It was in the air conditioning systems. So I just want to emphasize, if you go for option C and you get option C, that you pay special attention to air quality. It's going to cost more money, but you'll be, especially in a school system, well, a lot of young lungs and young mouths walking around, that you won't have air quality problem. But my vote is for option C. Thank you.
Rebecca?
I think,
So, you all set? Okay. So my recollection, I echo some of Todd's thoughts, was that the grant amount was not a significant amount as compared to how many schools there are. So I won't go into those details, but I just wanted to bring that up again. As far as the Board of Ed reserves, I share the same sentiments that it's concerning to wipe out a significant portion of the reserves. I'm more in favor of option C because of that. Makes me a little nervous to wipe so much out. The last thing I wanted to bring up is, since we're getting funding for this, is there any sort of required maintenance or standards we have to maintain on an ongoing basis? How much does it cost? What standards are we held to? So it's not something that maybe needs to be answered tonight, but just something to be aware of, what it'll cost.
The answer is there has to be a maintenance plan and the plan for it is part of the grant, by the time the grant's done. So the cost will be in there as well.
Okay.
So yes. I think the other, just the school thing, and again, 165 or 150 million, depending on what article you read, is a lot of money. And then you start dividing it up and it goes very quick. Totally get your point and totally understood. One of just something to throw out there is, if you put an air conditioning system in your school in the last 20 years, you are not eligible for this grant. If you built your building in the last 20 years, and you're not necessarily eligible unless it falls under certain categories. So with many places around the state having done these projects recently, they're ineligible. That being said, your point's totally valid, and there's probably a city that could eat $160 million in one project. So, in fact, I think we heard that on one of our webinars, was that, we don't have time to do it, but if we did, we could take every single dime of that just for this city. Pretty sure somebody actually said that. So, your point's very valid, and we're just trying to make the best of the situation.
So can I just ask a little bit more on there? Are there mandated standards or testing requirements with this grant? And are there mandated testing requirements with this grant? And is it covered? It is covered with these quotes that we're getting? Are we going to factor that in?
In terms of air quality?
Air quality, anything?
So the grant will need to be written for air quality. We'll have to say how it's going to improve air quality, and I assume there's tests that go with that. But, and again, I'm in an awkward place because there's two HVAC experts in the room, at least two. And there's lots of different measures for air quality. I'm not going to say I know all of them or anything like that. So the measures are different. I think some are humidity and some are other stuff, filtering. That's right.
Okay, well, I appreciate you coming and thinking this through in this manner. I think we have already authorized you to apply for $4.2 million grant. So I think what my feeling is, and we can just have a discussion about it, is that I think put in what you think you can get. Like, if you complete the grant application with what you have, how much you can get, what's already there, if you get something from the designer and it's enough, throw it in there. Like, put in what you think you can do, if that's the sentiment I think we're getting here. And it probably is C, in which case we've already spent money and we'll just get some additional funds. And then I think the feeling is, or the hope is, that there'll be a second round for this because they're not going to use all this money. And then by then we'll have a clearer picture for the other schools and for the whole system, and then we can take advantage of that as well. But I think at this point it's just get done what you think you can get done in the next 3 weeks or less, I don't, 2 weeks? And do you, and do your best, right?
Let me see if I can say what you said, make sure I were there. I think if it were me, I would go for the biggest catch I could catch. And if I can't work out enough details to be comfortable, then I would back off slowly. If you can't get all the design work for all 3 schools done, but you can get 2 done, apply for 2. If you can't get even 2 done, it ought to be like falling off a log to go to option C. That work is, I would think, basically in the book. But that's kind of given up on an opportunity. And I would not want to see us do that. I would work like a little beaver to get as much work, as much of the design work and specs as I could. And if I fall short, okay, but if I just say, well, we're gonna go for option C, that's throwing in the towel before the first punch has been thrown.
When you hired the design people, what's their time frame for coming up with the spec?
The ink is fairly dry on their contracts, we just,
So they don't,
hired them a couple
so when
months
you did the RFP or whatever, there's no like, this takes X amount of time?
They were very optimistic to be able to give us a project estimate of what we needed.
Yeah.
But they would like to know how much money that is. So our project estimate is X and we'll give us. But again, and I told.
It's like the used car dealer, how much
It is
money you
like a
got?
used car.
Right.
But again, no matter which one we get or whatever, I want to get, the project's not done at the grant.
Oh, right.
We only get the building maintenance program and reimbursement for the last. I mean, it doesn't mean that, everything's still keeping.
Oh, right, that's what I'm saying. This
Right,
is
so
the
it's gonna keep
gravy
going.
we just didn't know we were getting, and now we're just trying
Kind
to
of a bonus
get as
right
much
now, so
gravy as
everything
we
that
can,
do,
yeah.
And as they said, apply for it, the worst the state's gonna say is no.
Right.
It doesn't stop the process.
Right, and one other thing crosses, I'm sorry, Cindy.
No.
One other thing crosses my mind. What was illustrated here is use of BOE reserve capital. We don't have to do that. If you could
Right.
decide to
Right.
say, they've got what, 900,000 or something in contingency, right, in reserves right now? We don't want to go below 500, so we'll
that.
bond the rest.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
you don't have to,
We don't have to wipe them out.
right,
Exactly.
to
yeah.
do the job.
No, absolutely, yep.
Can I ask a question,
Yes.
though? If we were to apply for the full $4.2 million, it says there'd be an additional $457,000 of town fund needed. If we apply for it and they agree to it, don't we have to submit documentation saying we will take this $457,000 to referendum? So then the only way we can back out of it at that point is if it fails referendum?
Referendum, I think we're town meeting,
Or town
so I'm not, it's out of my realm, but I think we've done that level at town meeting.
And then, to Harvey's point, it could be 1.25 million if you take out the 800,000 for the reserves. Like,
Right, yeah.
it would be bonded for that much.
Right. How we pay for our
Our
share
share,
is something we'll face when we know what our share is,
exactly, yeah.
in my
Yeah.
opinion.
So, shoot for the stars, I guess, or shoot for the moon, aim for the stars, I'm not sure, but,
Yeah, may I?
yeah, go ahead.
Do y'all feel like you have marching orders from, or at least you know where we're at? Or you want something else? You want a note from Mom?
We need a note from Mom.
Well, I mean, I think, and not to get into the used car thing, and I get that. It is easier when you're talking about a set number. What I hear you saying is that start at C. If there are places where you don't have to make decisions that affect future quality measures, future project project doesn't impact your project negatively, and you wanna increase that, you know, explore that if you can, to get it, to make more use of the grant. But don't go to the nth degree of saying, well, you just take the cheapest thing on the rack, because it's $4 million either, so. So, I mean, we have some homework to do, so.
But get as much as you can, done.
I don't think it's realistic, based on our conversation, and Brian, I think, unless something changed in the last few days, we do, Pat kept saying the ink's just dry, I think the ink is still wet. Right? We're still waiting for some, is that true, Brian?
Yes.
Yeah, so we don't have an actual contract with them yet.
Okay.
So, you know, but I did not get a sense of optimism from them, they would even have one school done by 12/1.
Okay.
So,
It's 2 weeks.
Right.
It's 2 weeks.
I mean, they gotta get in these buildings and look around and,
It's 2 weeks, and we were ahead of the game because we had already had it on the radar. So, you know, I don't know
Do what you
what
can.
anybody else is
What do you
doing.
want us to do?
Right.
What do you want us to do?
I think you're just here to make us aware.
I think the bottom line is that if we went for the 4.2, we would require from the Board of Finance something saying that you are willing to take it to a referendum or to a town meeting to help finish the bonding for it.
You're committing to that money.
Because that's what the bottom line is, we have to have something in writing saying, or something saying that the Board of Finance, or Selectmen, or whoever, is willing to go to a town meeting at this time to help.
What did
fund.
we say on the last?
And at
we
the
have a
last one, it
motion?
was the okay for Brian to approve, to apply, up to 4.2.
Basically, you're putting your name onto this, committing to whatever monies.
Okay.
So that's what we need to leave here with, is what does Board of Finance feel comfortable for Cindy to submit in a number, right?
Here's the
So
minutes from the
basically,
last
we
meeting.
have you've already spent, whatever it was, $545,000.
Yes.
Got that money's committed. We don't need anything further from that because it's already committed. So no matter what C's going in, because we've got that money's committed. Even B, we have a lot of that already committed if you are willing to, or if you want to say, we'll do X number of dollars of the reserves. Again, that money's in the bank, it's sitting there. It's only if we get to the point where we have to go to the town and say, you need to bond this. So we're asking for the town to fund.
Okay, so
X
we,
number of dollars.
motion was made by Mr. Dutch to authorize the application for a Department of Administrative Services HVAC grant in the amount of $2.15 million for the upgrade and improvement of air handling system at 3 schools, noting there is a required match to that grant if awarded and accepted, would require additional appropriation approval by the town. Mr. Gelson second the motion, passed unanimously, motion carried.
Which
So does that not say
I
what,
think that would actually,
right? Is that not, did we not approve that already?
so that you're willing to go, yeah. so
Would
that you're
require-
willing to go to referendum or town meeting.
Noting that there is a required match, and that if awarded and accepted, would require additional appropriation approval by the town.
What
So I-
we, what we didn't know was that we're not gonna have anything in our hand by,
Right.
That's right.
Well, we kind of did.
Well, I
mean,
didn't.
I think this was only 4 weeks ago. This was asking them to do this in 6 weeks instead of 2 weeks, and I think,
well, maybe
At
it was
least-
wishful thinking, but.
yeah,
We're not gonna have the information.
right.
maybe to speak
Anytime soon.
bluntly, like just bluntly, I don't think the committee's real comfortable
Yeah.
that any of these numbers make any real solid sense, except for C.
Yeah.
So if you're asking me as the committee chair, you're asking my committee, what, in good faith, what can we tell you? We can't tell you A or B, right?
Right.
I think, and that's where the board, I think, does come in a little bit, right? Because, again, our task is not to do the financial piece of this, like, we want to help with that, right? But our task was to design an HVAC system for 3 schools. So, we're just concerned that we don't have enough information. We have not engaged with the designers in any meaningful format
Right.
to be able to say to you guys, hey, here's 4 options, and we think C is the best, right? We aren't there, but we didn't want to ignore the fact that this money is available. And so that's where we are. I mean, if I'm you, I'm questioning what number to use too, right? We don't know what number to tell you to use.
Well, we already approved you
Right.
for the 2.15, which is half. Okay, so Godspeed, fill out the paperwork, do it to the best of your ability, and get as much as you can,
Yes, what you can. Yep.
I think is what we're saying. That you can, comfortably fill out and not just throw, darts at the wall.
And they want.
And back up with, documentation and whatever. So I think that's where we are.
Just real quick though, if we're going to Plan C, why do we need this 3-school engineering then if we're not gonna do all?
No, the
We
project's
already,
still,
we already were. We were going to do it anyway.
no, the
Right, but we're not
project's-
gonna use it.
No,
No, we are.
We are.
Yeah, the project
For
is
3
the
schools?
project. The project is the project.
This is
This
just a
money
grant.
was
This is
extra. This money
extra.
was,
Side thing.
we discussed this, if you don't mind, we discussed this at the meeting too. And we really, at CIP, we really came to the realization that this is a split apart, okay? The task of the CIP is to design and come up with HVAC for all needs for all schools. Period, end of story. In addition, or a sub-part of that, was that this grant has now come in. So what part of that do we want to take out and put towards doing this? So that the full project is still gonna go forward. And we're hoping that eventually there's gonna be more grants that are gonna come down the pike. My guess is that there are going to be, because that's why all these schools are ramping up. And all these engineering firms, like the one we just hired, very bluntly said, all these schools are ramping up. So you guys are in good shape getting your stuff together. What this sub part was, is that all of a sudden we have a chance to go out for this money. What can we do at this point? And then the committee basically came up with C, which is paying for some of the stuff and getting reimbursed for what we have now. The chiller, because we've discussed that in Board of Ed, and put it onto the capital program and then taken it off because we couldn't afford it. And the BMS system, which will integrate into any new system that we have coming back up. Does that?
Yeah,
make
that's much
sense?
better, thank you.
yeah, these were all on the table anyway.
Okay.
And then it became a one project, and then it became, now there's a grant available, so,
And I think the idea of another grant coming around is
I think
probably
it will,
not-
because I think nobody's ready for this.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right. Quick athletic complex update.
Go ahead, refresher to it.
So, we expect to open up bids, next week, for a contractor, to take on the project. So, we are very, very excited. We have, the CIP committee did a very creative job of working the project and then making sure there's some alternates, to make sure that we can, again, maximize the use of funds. We received all the information back from the state for the 1.4 million that Cindy won, presented, worked with DEEP to get that going. We are happy to report that working with DEEP on grants is very nice. As long as you write what you need to in their signs, they're much more efficient
They just
than
want credit.
DAS. I shouldn't say
Okay.
that public, but it's been good, so.
How many
It's
bids
moving
did we
along. We
Comes on
opened
the
them on the 22nd, I think at 2 o'clock, don't quote me on that. So, but we had over 26 companies express interest in the project. So, and 2 had people who actually lived in town as part of the company, so it was kind of exciting. They were personally interested in the project. This was another interesting piece, is our architect for the last project we talked about, actually was in town as well, so it's kind of neat, we're having some locals get
That's cool.
involved in our project.
26.
Did I miss something?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
Thank you very
you.
much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Unless you have anything else to say. Don, did you have anything you wanted to add to any of that stuff? Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here.
You know better.
Why put on the list?
He liked
Yeah, I
option-
think
he
we're all
liked
set with
option
that.
B.
Oh, Joe.
Thank you. That was a lot.
Take care.
Thank you.
Tracy, before we move on, I don't recall if we actually called for public comment.
Oh, at the beginning we did.
We did.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Okay, all right,
Just there was
Yeah.
no response.
okay. I just think if we.
No, thank you for waking us up, but yeah, we did.
Yeah, we usually have two.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
there
right.
is one at the end as well,
Yeah.
but I just didn't remember.
It's not
so
on
I
the
wanted to make
agenda.
sure.
It's not on
I
the agenda.
don't think it's on the agenda, the one at the end, I think is on the notes.
It was on the meeting? Okay, all right. Oh, right, okay, we have to make sure it goes on the agenda too.
Yeah, I see.
Figured out.
Okay.
All right, policy, Lakes Association Reserve Policy. So last we met, I had said that Board of Ed usually does a, first reading, second reading, and adopt on the second reading. So, here we are, and here how it fits into our matrix that, we've come up with, as Harvey had mentioned previously. So, proposed as Appendix A, so they were in reverse, so. So they're in reverse as far as the old business, new business. So let's do Lakes Association since it's first on the agenda, even though it's listed as Appendix B. All right, Rob, do you want to
Sure.
summarize here?
So, as we discussed this last month, we looked at the change in the policy from the perspective of that the Board of Finance would be asked to approve the carryover of unexpended funds. The difficulty with that is that for every capital fund that we have, funds automatically carry over from one year to the next if they're unexpended, because the nature of capital projects are that they often straddle a year or take more than a year. So we reworked this to look at it more from a perspective of, well, if you have money that you haven't spent and you don't have a plan on how you're going to spend it, we're not going to give you more money to spend the following year. So this reworking of it, first, it makes it clear that each separate lake association funds are counted separately so that there isn't just an automatic rollover of, Lake 3 didn't spend their money, but Lake 1 did, so Lake 1 then gets Lake 3's excess money. Instead, it's all counted separately, and really the purpose of this is to say if, let's say Lake 1 was allocated $10,000 for capital and they spent $2 million, we're not going to allocate another $10,000 next year for them unless they give us a plan that we like for the $8,000 that's unexpended.
Does that make sense? Is that what we're thinking? That's what that's our intent? And we put it in words? Okay. All right. And, all right, so any questions on the lakes part?
And we don't have pushback from the associations the way we're presenting this?
I haven't heard
I
anything.
mean, I think
I-
this is what
I-
they were looking for, right?
I sent them a draft of this 2 meetings ago, and they didn't say word one. This is actually a little bit less of a pain in the neck to them than the first draft, because they don't have to prove to us that we should roll the funds over.
Right.
So,
Because it just happens
It
automatically.
just happens
right,
automatically.
so I don't see that they,
So they're better off this way than they were the other way.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
that's right.
Okay, so let's do them separately. I need a motion to approve the revision to the fund policies to add the appendix addressing Lakes Association unexpended funds and make reference to the appendix in the table of contents and to the lakes category on page 6 of the policy.
Gelston, so moved.
Thank you. And seconded? Second?
I'll second.
Bruce, thank you. Any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, excellent. All right, now to the Board of Ed. Rob?
Understanding that we're essentially following what we have done in past years, which is, I believe that we're incenting the board when they save money or have unexpended money at the end of the year, they should get some benefit for that rather than it simply lapsing back to fund balance. So while the policy grid already says that the source of funds for the educational capital reserve is education fund appropriation and educational operating funds remaining at the end of the fiscal year. This is just to clarify just a little bit further that that the superintendent will make a request in writing to the Board of Finance to ask to have these funds appropriated, because it is actually a additional appropriation, because automatically when the funds are unexpended, they lapse back to fund balance, but we're acknowledging
Because it's
where
operating.
they came from. I'm sorry.
Because it's operating.
Right,
Yeah.
correct. But so then the Board of Finance is able to act on that request from the superintendent of schools. It also acknowledges that, that appropriation, because again, it is an additional appropriation in the new year, must be approved at town meeting. And further goes on to say that it's independent of the education, I'm sorry, of the development of the annual capital plan, because we traditionally allocate a certain amount to Board of Ed capital as just part of our regular budget process. It doesn't say that the Board of Finance can't take into account how much is in now the
Right.
education reserve, but it does acknowledge that they're separate processes.
Very nice. Any questions on that? All right. So let's do another one then. I need a motion to approve the revision to the fund policies to add the appendix addressing Board of Education unexpended funds and make reference to the appendix in the table of contents and to the education category on page 6 of the policy. Motion.
So moved.
Bruce, Dutch, thank you. A second.
Second, Watley?
Rebecca, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much, Rob. This was
Very good.
Yeah, thank you.
tedious. Well done. And Harvey. I know Harvey put a lot in there. All right. We have another DUI grant that we have to do. Have a match.
Well, now we accept it, right?
Oh, right. Oh, that's right. This was, we did
We
the
already-
thing.
we
This is
already
the,
accepted
right,
applied
okay.
for it.
So, motion to accept the fiscal year 2023 comprehensive DUI enforcement program grant for the resident trooper towns in the amount of $19,568.42 with no town match, and to request that the Board of Selectmen schedule a town meeting for approval. Motion.
So moved.
Harvey, thank you. Second.
Second, Watley?
Thank you, Rebecca. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And lastly, we have our meeting, not the budget thing, but the actual meetings for the Board of Finance for next year. Looking down, I don't see any holidays. Did we have to skip over a couple things, I think?
In November and October, I
October.
think the first Monday in both of those months were holidays, so I moved it to this, I'm sorry, the second Monday, so I,
Yep.
first Monday, sorry. But yeah, so I did.
And I don't see Valentine's Day or anybody on here, so. Can I get a motion to approve the 2023 Board of Finance meeting calendar?
So moved.
Bruce, thank you. A second?
Second?
Thank you, Joe. Pipes. Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Everybody move, okay.
And just as an informational point, we're also applying for the ERP EMPB, I'm sorry, I can never remember the acronym for that, but it's the Emergency so it's EMPG, Emergency Management Grant. The application just came out last week and it's due December 1. The reason why I didn't bring that to the Board of Finance for authorization to approve is that we haven't ever brought it to the Board of Finance in past years simply because it's budgeted. It's a revenue that's already in the approved budget.
Okay,
But you will still have, assuming that we're awarded it, you'll still have the opportunity to accept the grant or to deny the grant when
Okay.
that award comes through.
awesome. Anything else?
Do you have a way of knowing if anyone's got questions?
Do you have access to the?
I have the email, which is actually on the website as being the email for budget questions, but let me
Okay.
just double check.
Again, if there's no one else in the room, I figure we better.
Thank you. Anybody's watching us? we can
Nope, nothing.
Motion to adjourn.
Ooh, okay.
Second.
Harvey, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes.
Oh, we had 2 people watching. One of which was Linda, I'm sure.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, Linda.